Now, of course, the fighting continues. Gunfire resumed yesterday in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, after the end of a 24-hour ceasefire that had given civilians, some, of course, respite from nearly 2 months of war. Deadly fighting has raged in the northeast African country since mid-April, when Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the paramilitary rapid support forces, turned on each other.
The latest ceasefire agreement enabled civilians trapped in the capital, Khartoum, to venture outside and stock up on food and other essential supplies. But only 10 minutes after it ended yesterday, the capital was rocked again by shelling and clashes with heavy artillery fired in Khartoum and its twin city Omdurman to the north. And fighting also erupted on Al Hawa Street, a major artery in the south of the capital. Joining us this morning is Dr. Magdalene El Haj El Taher. She's an expert on Sudanese geopolitics and also an advocate for democracy and human rights. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, now let's get into it. The ongoing war between these rival generals in Sudan has far-reaching humanitarian implications. It does seem from the outside that it would be some selfish interests that are at stake here. So I'd like you to give us further insight into, the possible reasons for the worsening crisis.
The possible reasons for the ongoing fight is the fact that first of all, the two parties did not adhere to the ceasefire agreement. This is what is one of the main things which make civilians' lives and planning and so on very, very, very difficult because they have been systematically breaking the ceasefire agreement. And the second one is because of the spreading of the fighting to other cities like Al-Ubaid, for example, in northern Kordofan. That is a very serious escalation because as it is now, people have fled Khartoum. Very many millions of them seek refuge in other cities which are quite safe at the moment, at least. So spreading the fight outside Khartoum is very dangerous escalation. And the third one, of course, reinforcement, which both parties are receiving from outside the country, that be the rapid response forces who have been receiving reinforcements via Libya from different countries, and the SAF who are receiving reinforcement again through the air. There are reports that the Egyptian air defense is actually striking in Khartoum on behalf of staff. So this kind of things escalate the situation and does not help.
Oh, well, let's also talk a little bit about the breakdown in the peace agreement or in the ceasefire. There are negotiations ongoing that, of course, will be influenced by other countries. Talk about that, and how, maybe that also is not working. And, why don't we have, enough influence from maybe even outside the continent and from the African Union and whoever else to be able to ensure that there is peace in Sudan?
The negotiations happening in Jeddah have several weaknesses. The weakness number one, it takes away entirely and completely any presence of the any African country or African Union. So it takes the whole conflict in the hands of the Americans and the Saudi Arabians. That in itself is not a very fortunate position for the Sudanese people. We do believe that African problems should be resolved by African will. In the absence of that will, the Americans and the Saudis, they hijacked these negotiations. This is one aspect. The second aspect, I really have to emphasize, entirely against Burhan and SAF. However, SAF is, despite the corruption of the generals, this is the Sudanese armed forces. Officially, yes, it is corrupt, it's hijacked, it has been hijacked by the Islamists for 34 years. However, this is the official Sudanese armed forces. In the Jeddah agreement, they are put in equal footing with the rapid response forces, which is a militia. It's a militia based. It's a militia, and that in itself is undermining SAF, and that in itself is undermining the stability of the country, because they are treated in every single thing as equal partners, and that should not be the case. The RSF should be declared a militia and should be called out for what it is, which is a militia. And the SAF, for all its corruption and so on, this is after all the Sudanese armed forces, the official Sudanese armed forces. So therefore, that we understand why, because SAF was the Rapid Response Forces was created to serve regional interests. It is funded by regional interests. It is funded by the Saudis, and it is funded by the United Arab Emirates with the blessings of the United States. And therefore, it is in the interest of these countries that the Rapid Response Forces should continue in existence. And therefore, with every peace negotiations, all kind of power dealing, sharing deals in the last 4 years, the Rapid Response Forces and Hemeti received a very important place on the table, because he and this militia serves the interests of these countries, and that situation will never lead to any peace in the Sudan so long as the militia is funded, supported, given political recognition and strength. Then these negotiations are doomed to fail.
All right. Now, beyond the politics beyond the drama we can see from the outside as to why they can't reach certain agreements, there have been speculations about the involvement of Russia in the current crisis in Sudan. On the one hand, the leader of the RRF has been accused of, or there have been speculations that he's had some dealings with the Wagner group, and how he's protected some of the gold mining sites in Sudan on behalf of Russia. There's also been allegations, of al-Burhan as well, shaking hands with Russia. So from where you stand, from what you've, seen so far, how much influence do you think external forces have on this war beyond what meets the eye? And is there any truth to these claims?
This war here has internal reasons and external reasons. I will very briefly run you through the internal reasons before we go into the external reasons. The internal reasons are three. The first one is the unequal development between Khartoum and the rest of the country. The vibrant economic of Khartoum did not ever reflect its on the preference, and this war have exposed that very much, that all the development of the Sudan, the economy of the Sudan, the middle class of the Sudan, the education of the Sudan is in and around Khartoum, for the benefit of the 6 to 7 million people living in Khartoum. But there are 46 million Sudanese people. All the rest of the country in the peripheries, they have nothing. And hence, when the war happened, they really have not been affected very much, because they were already living under poverty. They were already not receiving anything from Khartoum in order to, this goes back from after independence. The second reason is religion. The religion has, political Islam has been at the grip of Sudanese politics for the last, I would say, 40 years. And that has come and created a lot of divisions within the country. And the third reason is ethnicity. And ethnicity between the African, the diversity between, and our position between African and Arab identity, that has created a lot of tension. regional tensions and ethnic tensions. So these are the internal reasons which we Sudanese people have to face to and deal with. When it comes to externally, Sudan is blessed with a lot of assets, and not the least its geographical position. We are by the Red Sea. There is a very clear superpower fight over the Red Sea. That be the Russians, the Chinese, or the Americans. Everybody wants to have their hand in the Red Sea, and countries Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and Djibouti, these countries suffered and will suffer very much so long as superpowers have their eye on the Red Sea. And the Red Sea controls over 50% of world trade between Asia and Europe, comes through the Suez Canal and through the Red Sea. He who has a hand on the Red Sea will ensure prosperity for their empire in the next 50 years. And hence, countries, superpowers, either directly or through their agents in the region, in this case, the United States through its agents in the Gulf region, have and will continue creating a lot of misery for the Americans to have a dominance on that. And to ensure that the Chinese do not have access to the Red Sea, the Russians do not have access to the Red Sea. This will mean cynically to create the Rapid Response Forces in the Sudan, the Haftar group in Libya, groups in Somalia, groups in Djibouti, so that these militias,
All right.
because by their nature they are paid for, they serve the Russians, they can serve the Americans, they can serve whoever pays the price. And all this is happening because of the lack of
Okay.
African leadership. It is happening in
Absolutely.
African
And
countries.
yeah, yeah.
It's happening to African people, African people, because of the lack of African leadership. We
I
Africans
totally agree with that, and of course, for a long time, it's not just Sudan now. Many other countries have fallen under the influence of these, external forces and the West generally. We basically fight the battles of the West here in Africa, and they don't lose any soldiers, they don't lose any people, but Africans get to suffer. But thanks very much for your time this morning. We really enjoyed your breakdown
You're
of
welcome.
these issues, and we pray for
You're
peace in
welcome.
Sudan. Looking forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely.
Now let's go on a break. This is still Breakfast Central. We're going to break, and when we come back, we'll be looking into some sports.